Go, Pack, go. Go, Pack, go. Hello, folks. Welcome to Jeremy Hadler's YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jeremy Hadler. And today, GOAT Series Season 2, baby, has officially arrived. And I will talk about my team for Episode 1, the Green Bay Packers. Let's go. Let's go. Season 2, baby. We're back at it. Last season, we did about each position of who we thought was the greatest player, and we had guests on. I'll be starting off my own here for my Packers, and then we'll be going through different guests throughout this panel. And through that, we're going to be covering who's the best player in each NFL franchise. So we're going to go from Episode 1 here, as we currently stand, all the way to Episode 32. So we'll see who is the greatest player in each franchise history, in my opinion, of their franchise. And we got the same rules as last season by having 5 potential candidates and honorable mentions. And when I have guests on, they can choose the honorable mention if they want to. So go over the criteria here, folks, as I did last season. Start off, this one is the accomplishments. You got to look at what they achieved, their tenure of the team, and their stats. This is based off only their time with the team of their franchise. So, for example, we're going to have Aaron Rodgers on this episode here. We're going to look through his stats of what he did as a Packer. Only his stats count as a Packer, not what he did with the Jets for 4 plays. And then we're looking through his on and off the field of what they did of on the field. Obviously, we're talking about the stats, as I just mentioned before. And at the end of the video, we'll be doing our ultimate GOAT. But in this episode, I'll be doing my ultimate Packer GOAT. But let's get it started, folks. Honorable mention. There are so many guys you could argue the Packers. There's so many guys. For me, I had to stick to one, but there were a couple other guys that you could make arguments for, like Leroy Butler, who unfortunately did not make this list. But Vincent Lambeau had a Hall of Fame career for the Packers. You could go with other guys like Donald Driver. Fortunately, he didn't make the list either. I mean, we could go all day of like potentials that should be honorable mention. But for this one, I had to stick with this guy because I thought he deserved it here. And that is Ray Nitschke. Played 15 seasons with the Green Bay Packers. He's a 5-time champion, 2-time Super Bowl champion, made first-team All-Pro 2 times, 5 second-team All-Pro, 1-time Pro Bowler, inducted in the Packers Hall of Fame, retired his number with the Packers, and to his stats books, which in his time, stats were not that much calculated as they are today, especially with sacks. He had 23 fumble recoveries, 2 fumbles, 16 sacks, 25 interceptions. Do you ever watch a clip of him, or you try to read the articles or try to watch something on YouTube? He is one of the hardest hitters you'll ever see. He's like a Ray Lewis out there of hard hitting, folks. He was tough, strong player. And an interesting story about Ray Nitschke that I had on season 1 about him was one time he was practicing with the Packers, and it was a big windy day, gust, and the coaching tower was blown over by the wind and fell on top of Ray Nitschke. And Lombardi ran over to see what had happened, and apparently the coaching tower hit Ray Nitschke on him, and made a dent into his helmet. And you can find that at the Packers Hall of Fame museum, folks, to see that. But he was fine. He was okay. But that just goes to show you that a 1,000-pound steel coaching tower fell on top of Ray Nitschke, and he was fine. But what I really know about Ray Nitschke of his game, hard-hitting tackles, I already mentioned before, excellent pass coverage. He was the 4th of 6 numbers to retire by the Packers, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1978, passed away in 1998, rest in peace. He was very resilient, had great instincts, and know how to stop opposing offenses. He is one of the best guys that ever go out there on the field, especially the linebacker position. Most doubtedly deserves to be on this honorable mention list. I have to put him up here, next player on my list. If everyone knew me very well, you would know who this player is. That is the bad man. He's a bad man. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers played 18 seasons with the Green Bay Packers, 1-time Super Bowl champion, 1-time Super Bowl MVP, 4-time MVP, 4 first-team All-Pro, 1 second-team All-Pro, 10-time Pro Bowler, 4-time passer rating leader, 2-time passing TDs leader, and he's a 1-time NFL completion percentage leader. Now, interesting thing about Aaron Rodgers is he's minority owner for the Milwaukee Bucks. So he's got 1 NBA ring, folks, if you want to consider that of sports of all his. Now, Aaron Rodgers, he fell so far in his draft that a lot of teams could have taken him, a lot of teams, and he was considered the number 1 overall pick, but Alex Smith was taken over him. That was a mistake for the 49ers and some other teams that didn't take him in that draft. But he fell all the way to the Green Bay Packers, and he put on a show for the Packers, put one of the best careers out there. And to get more of his achievements, he has some NFL records. The single-season passer rating leader, which is 122.5, best touchdown-interception ratio all-time in season, and he's the lowest interception percentage in a season and all-time, Also, most consecutive seasons complete without an IET, which is 402. And he's the 5th player to win MVP in consecutive seasons. And he tied the franchise record by throwing 6 touchdown passes. To give you some stats about him, he had over 5,000 completed passes, had a 65.3 completion percentage, 59,055 passing yards, 475 passing TDs, 105 INTs, and 103.6 passer rating, folks. I mean, he had one of the best careers in the Green Bay Packers uniform, especially with the stats, all the achievements, folks. He was the Packer. He was not supposed to be the next great guy because he sat under Brett Favre for 3 years, and no one really thought he would be that great. He helped the Packers win a Super Bowl, helped them get into multiple playoffs, even though some of them were disappointments and should have probably won more Super Bowls. But he is one of the most talented guys I've ever seen in the quarterback position, and the way he throws the ball is just amazing. He doesn't even have to put like so much power that I'll get to about another quarterback in this video. But the fact that he all this when almost nobody thought he could do it is amazing. Amazing that he put up 18 seasons for the Green Bay Packers. And he's my favorite quarterback of all time, but got to give appreciation to Aaron Rodgers. I know he's not on the team anymore. He's with the New York Jets, but I appreciate his time for everything he did with the Green Bay Packers. Thank you, Aaron. Next on our list. Now, for this player, everyone knows who it is when you think of Ice Bowl. Who was the quarterback that snuck in the game-winning touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys? Bart Starr. Bart Starr, ladies and gentlemen, played 16 seasons for the Green Bay Packers, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time NFL champion, 1 first-team All-Pro, 3 second-team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 4-time completion percentage leader, made the Packers Hall of Fame. His numbers retired by the Green Bay Packers. He made the NFL Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers, which I mentioned before, he will make the Hall of Fame. Ray Nitschke, he made the Hall of Fame too. Bart Starr's stats, folks, 152 passing TDs, 80.5 passer rating, 57.4 completion percentage, 24,178 passing yards. And also, he's the only quarterback in the NFL history to lead a team to 3 consecutive championships in 65, 66, and 67. Yes, 2 of them were the Super Bowl, and 1 was the NFL championship. Now, in my opinion, you got to count those pre-Super Bowls of championships. You got to count those because if we're looking at comparative sports here, go look at baseball, go look at basketball, go look at hockey, because before that, those were still considered championships, and they play the same allowed tournament level and same difficulty as the other sports. So in my opinion, you got to count the pre-Super Bowl era. You got to count that, folks. Because the Packers, we got the most NFL championships of all time, but you got to count that, folks. Now, Bart Starr, what stuck out to me when you watch a little bit of his film that was left of him, he was very poised. He was very methodical of how he played the game, very calm under pressure like Joe Cool Montana. He had great accuracy, very good decision-making process, and he would make audibles and adjustments that you need usually, and a lot of quarterbacks will do this during the game. He was able to extend plays. Aaron Rodgers also able to extend plays, and Bart Starr was the guy who extended a lot of plays too. So he would just make great plays, had great IQ and awareness of when to throw it to his guys and get through the defenders and opposing defenses and score the game-winning touchdowns. He had a lot of great comebacks, but Bart Starr, he was the guy who set the tone for the Packers franchise of quarterbacks, and Aaron Rodgers, he took it to the next level. And we're going to get to another quarterback very soon with that. But Bart Starr, an amazing player. Rest in peace. He was an amazing guy. Next on our list is a legend, Don Hutson. Played 11 seasons with the Packers, 3-time NFL champion, 8 first-team All-Pros. That's insane. 4-time Pro Bowler, 8-time receptions leader, 7-time receiving yards leader, 9-time receiving TD leader, 5-time NFL scorer, 2-time MVP. Hutson invented the modern pass receiving of how you're supposed to catch of like different routes and all of that, especially on going through slants, outposts, and going up top. He was very good at that and started for receivers. He was a starter for all of that in the NFL. Retired with the Green Bay Packers. He was the first guy to retire with the Packers with their number. Dug to the NFL Hall of Fame, dug in the Packers Hall of Fame. Very consistent guy. He was very consistent, and that's what really stood out to me. And after Don Hutson retired, he had over 18 NFL records. 18! That's insane. 18. Now, I know it's way back then, but having over 18 NFL records is still pretty good. That includes over 488 career receptions. That was one record, which was 200 more than the closest competitor at the time. Played 116 games in 11 seasons, and to use some stats about him, he had over 7,991 receiving yards, 488 receptions, 99 receiving TDs, and Don Hutson would be the youngest receiver in NFL history to lead the league in both receptions and receiving yards during a single season. And that record stood for more than 87 years, and that was broken by Justin Jefferson not that long ago. That's insane. 87 years in holding that record, that's amazing. No one can really do that. A break of holding that record, that's very good. Holding a record for 87 years, that's pretty good. Now, more so about Don Hutson that stood out to me with his game. He was a good route runner, had some moves of like mentioned before, going slants, going up top, going the post route, just being able to beat the cornerback one-on-one and figure out different ways to beat him. He was so good at that, and he dominated his era. He would dominate his era, and statistically, given his time, he was pretty good. So, but Don Hutson, you got to give appreciation where it is. You got to give appreciation where it is. Next on our list is Brett Favre, the gunslinger. That's our great or terrible. Now, we've seen both, especially as a Packer fan base, we've seen both of that, where in the Giants game in the NFC Championship in 2007, he missed it through an interception in overtime, lost the game there. But there are other times where he just throws it deep and just throws it with so much power and helps them win, especially in the Super Bowl when he won it for the Packers against the New England Patriots in 96-97. Amazing there. It's very interesting how the Packers got him because Brett Favre was originally drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, and Jerry Glanville, the Falcons head coach at the time, did not like Brett Favre one so bit. And Brett Favre was the third string quarterback, if I'm correct, at the time for the Falcons. And one time the Packers are playing the Falcons at Atlanta, and Ron Wolf is getting a hot dog right before the game, and one of his personnel guys tells him, you gotta look at this guy because they don't show him very much in the warm-ups, so you gotta go see him. And Ron Wolf went to go see him, who was the Packers GM at the time, one of the greats too, and he went to go down and look and saw Brett Favre had a pretty good arm, and Ron Wolf wanted a quarterback badly. I mean, they had Don Majkowski, the Magic Man, at the time, but Ron Wolf wanted a franchise guy because Don was good, but they didn't know if he was that great, and Ron saw potential in. He saw something potential in Brett Favre, and he went to go make a trade and call the Falcons up. He traded a first round for Brett Favre. Now, at the time, everyone was like, what the heck are you doing, Ron Wolf? Why would you do this? You're going to get fired. Stupid move. One of the worst. That move helped turn the Packers franchise way around by that move because from the 70s and 80s, the Packers were terrible. They were absolutely terrible. Ever since the Lombardi days were over, Packers were terrible. Then Brett Favre comes into play. Him and Ron Wolf helped turn that franchise around and help them to becoming a winning franchise once again. So it's amazing how Brett Favre, you trade a first-round pick, and that saved the Packers. That nobody really knew about Brett Favre during that time. You couldn't pronounce his last name. It was like Favre or Favre. Like, they didn't know how to pronounce it. The Packer fans did when he came into the game. When Don Majkowski got hurt against the Bengals in week 1, I believe it was, and Brett puts on a show, gets the game-winning drive, lets the game-winning field goal, doesn't even touch it, lets it bounce of like whoop and kicks it in. Just amazing there. But to give you some achievements with Brett Favre, won a Super Bowl for Packers one time, won the MVP 3 times. He's a one-time Offensive Player of the Year, 3 first-team All-Pro, 3 second-team All-Pro, 11 Pro Bowler, 11-time Pro Bowler, 4-time passing TDs leader, 2-time passing yards leader, 1-time completion percentage leader. He got his number retired by the Packers. He made the Packers Hall of Fame and made the NFL Hall of Fame. He used some stats about it, and then we're going to get into the end of his career, which is very interesting of how it all turned out. And we already mentioned the guy on the list here. His stats books had an 85.8 passer rating, 61,655 passing yards, 422 passing TDs, helped the Packers get back in the glory, as I mentioned before. Now, the thing with Brett Favre, again, towards the end of his career, which I'm going to get to in a minute here, but more about his gunslinger, what really stood out to me was he would be very passionate on the field. He was very unpredictable, and that's what a gunslinger is because you don't know if he's going to throw a touchdown, amazing play, or throw an interception. You just didn't know. And he was also very fearless, too. He would get hurt in the game, like if he got like something bad happened to him, he would go back in the game and go play and fight it out on the field. And he did that a bunch of times. Like there was one game I remember watching like on YouTube was against the Chicago Bears. He twisted his ankle and he got back in there and won the game for the Packers, which is amazing. Now, the thing with Brett Favre's late part of his career with the Packers was Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers during late in his career, which is like 3 years of this process that Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre are put together because Ted Thompson decided to draft, who's the Packers GM at the time, decided to draft Aaron Rodgers. And that did not stick well with Brett Favre. That really did not, because he wasn't a fan of it. He thought he still had enough in the tank. And this goes on for so many years of like, is Aaron Rodgers going to start over? Is Brett Favre declining? Is he going to lose and all that? That lasted 3 years of those two being on the same team. Brett Favre at the time was not very happy, as I mentioned before, and not a great teammate to Aaron Rodgers, because he wasn't wanting to take his job and take it away from him. And during the process, Brett Favre had a great season in the 07 where a team that nobody thought that they would do great with took him so far. And with the 3 years, it contemplated whether Brett Favre was going to retire, because if you look at every year from those seasons when Rodgers sat under him, there was contemplating of where Favre's going to retire or not. Like, if you look at the post-game press conference, especially, he will consider like, I don't know, I'm considering it, maybe not. Like, that's how it went. But it came down to the end of the straw when, after the Packers lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game in 07, there was a line where Packers were ready to move on from Favre and put Rodgers in. And during like the middle of the summer, like training camp about to start, Favre, like, he retired at the time after the end of the 07 season, but he wanted to come back and play for the Packers. He badly wanted to. And Ted Thompson stuck to his gut and said, we're going to put Aaron Rodgers in. Brett, thank you for your time, but we don't want you. Brett wanted to go play the Packers. He wanted to play the Packers so badly. And he asked, can I go play with the Minnesota Vikings, the Bears, or Lions? And Ted goes like, no, we don't want you to go play for our rival. And what that led to, folks, was he got traded to the Jets, lasted about a season or two. Then he goes to Minnesota. He went to go stab the Packer fans. That did not sit well, especially when the retirement ceremony came up of when he was getting inducted into the Packers NFL Hall of Fame and when he had a retirement speech on Lambeau Field. A lot of people were still mixed about that because it was like 5 years since he had that purple incarnation uniform on him, the Minnesota Viking. And when he came on the stage, lots of Packer fans just gave him a huge applaud. They applaud him for everything that he did. I mean, I'm still with Brett. I don't like that he went to the Minnesota Vikings, but you can't deny what he did for the Packers organization, as I just mentioned. Help the Packers get back to glory and set the franchise back on top again. So Brett Favre, I got here. He absolutely deserves to be on this list. Whether you like him or you don't like him, especially off-field stuff, but that's a whole nother different story. That's after the career, folks, after the career of the Packers. And then my last player on the list I got in the uniform here. Got my uniform here. That is the Minnesota defense. Reggie White. Reggie White played 6 seasons for the Green Bay Packers, 1-time Super Bowl champion, 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, 6 Pro Bowls, 2 first-team All-Pro, 4 second-team All-Pro, made the Packers Hall of Fame, made the NFL Hall of Fame, has been retired by the Green Bay Packers. His stats with the Packers, folks: 58.5 sacks, 13 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries, 1 interception, 28 passes defended, 296 total tackles. Now, it's very interesting how Reggie White became a Green Bay Packer, because it's kind of similar to like the Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre story that I mentioned before. At the time, Reggie wanted to explore NFL free agency, and at that time, you were not allowed to, because under the NFL, you were supposed to stick to your team pretty much your entire career at that point. But Reggie was threatened to sue the NFL if they didn't allow that. And NFL approved it, and Reggie was going to explore the NFL free agency. There were so many teams that went after him. The Eagles were trying to re-sign him, but they had a lousy owner at the time who was not willing to pay because he was very cheapskate, and you can ask Eagle fans about that. Cleveland was an option. The Green Bay Packers, this little old town, somehow had a chance to get the best defensive player in the NFL at the time, somehow. And a funny story of how that happened real quick was the Packers head coach at the time, Holmgren, calls Reggie White, and Reggie picks up the phone, and Mike Holmgren says, Reggie, this is God. Come play for the Packers. Hangs up the phone, and Reggie went to the Packers. And just great player, amazing player, managed the defense, set the tone, helped the Packers get back to the culture like I mentioned with Brett Favre and Ron Wolf. Reggie became the highest paid player at the time in NFL history of free agency, and he helped build a culture here, won a Super Bowl with us, make plays when the game were on the line. He was the leader of that defense, became a legend here, known for his hump move. And this is one of the things I always love about Reggie, is he would take the offensive lineman and boom, push him out of the way, hump move, push him out, and just beat him and sack the quarterback. There were so many times of that, and just amazing. And another thing that Reggie White became part of was the Lambeau Leap tradition, where during the Packers-Raiders game, it was a fumble, and Reggie White picks up the football, and he's about to go out of bounds and tosses it right to Leroy Butler, who was the Packers safety at the time and amazing player I mentioned before, runs to the end zone and jumps into the stands to create the Packers Lambeau Leap touchdown at the time. So Reggie was part of creating the Lambeau Field tradition of the Green Bay Packers. Reggie, amazing player for the Packers. Given the short amount of time he did in his 6 years, he was phenomenal during his time. Made All-Pro all the time, won Super Bowl with us, and became a legend. Not only in NFL, but really with the Packers and in general sports too. But he was a legend of the Packers, and he will always be known as a Packer and Eagle. But Reggie, amazing player to me. Amazing player to me. And now we get to my GOAT. It comes down to 3 players to me, and that's the quarterbacks. Bart Starr, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers. Bart, he started with the Lombardi era. Brett brought them back to glory. Rodgers took it to the next level and won a Super Bowl with us. In my opinion, I think it's Aaron Rodgers because, not only did he win the Super Bowl with the Packers, but he put up phenomenal stats for the Packers, was there longer than any Packer. He used the Frank Gore list too, folks, which is insane. 18 years with the Packers. You didn't think that. Won multiple MVPs, set the tone, and he helped the Packers win multiple games, like the Hail Mary games, going to beat the Dallas Cowboys or the Seattle Seahawks for a couple times, but not the NFC Championship part. But there were multiple times where Rodgers just carried the Packers on his back, and he would just own the Chicago Bears, for example, and annihilate them. But he was the king of the North, and he put up a fantastic career for the Packers. So, my opinion, I'm going to give it to that bad man, Mr. Aaron Rodgers. He is my ultimate GOAT and the greatest Packers player in franchise history up to this point. But, folks, that will do it here. Appreciate you tuning in. This is episode 1. Next episode, we're going to head to Detroit Lions and continue with the NFC North, and then we're going to head to the NFC East, continue the NFC, and then head over to the AFC. So that will be the schedule here. We're going to try and post one video once a week here. We're going to try and doing that, folks. But that's a wrap for the studio, folks. I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if not done so already. Would appreciate it. And let me know, who is your honorable mention? Who is your greatest Packer of all time? And who should have been recognized on this list here, folks? Who should have been? Should have been Leroy Butler. I really wanted to put him, but I thought Ray Nitschke just inched him out just a little bit. But there's so many you could argue of being honorable mention, even in the consideration list too, folks. Let me know in the chat. But as always, go, Pack!